The discussion around artificial general intelligence is pointless. And most people, including in the tech world, are literally better off doing literally anything else other than stressing about it. If you're worried about artificial general intelligence, AGI, coming and replacing you and creating a dystopia, then I hope that with this video, I can put your worries at ease. There have been many arguments from industry experts and in the online space about what the timeline around AGI might look like. Most arguments against AGI say the same thing. It's not coming anytime soon. We have to hit X, Y, and Z milestone. We need continual learning. Or transformer architecture isn't how we get there. These arguments, while well-reasoned and well-articulated, make two key assumptions that are not to be taken for granted at all. One, that AGI is coming in the first place, and two, if and when it comes, we'll know exactly what it is. Yes, I'm claiming that artificial general intelligence, at least the way that most people in the tech world see it, might not come at all. I know. If you're anything like me and you've been listening to different tech podcasts or have been on tech Twitter, you might be doing a double take right now, trying your absolute best not to smash that dislike button with all your might. You're probably asking, how could I possibly say that? What about AI agents, video generation models, all the benchmarks being obliterated these past few years? What about all these claims coming from experts, CEOs, and VCs? Rest assured, I'll get to those points soon enough. I'm not saying that AI will not have a profound impact on society. I mean, it already has. My point is that the term artificial general intelligence is a phrase that no longer carries any real meaning. Look, I'm not an ethics or philosophy expert by any means. I'm no Dwarkesh Patel, Ilya Sutskever, or godfather of AI. I'm Dan, and while I am a machine learning engineer at a large tech company, as I'll get to later in the video, credentials and experiences don't matter at all when it comes to making future predictions about something like artificial general intelligence. With discussions like this, there's always a risk of this video aging very poorly and of me being proven very wrong on the internet. But I speak with conviction. I feel like this is an important discussion that is not being talked about enough. With that said, let's start by debunking the second assumption, that if and when artificial general intelligence comes, we'll know exactly what it is. So I claim that no one can really agree on what artificial general intelligence is, but I can think of about three broad definitions that people have thrown out over time on what AGI could possibly be. And I'll be discussing why none of them are worth obsessing over. The first and honestly most compelling yet most underwhelming definition is what we already have now. AI that can pass the Turing Test. For those of you unaware, the Turing Test, created by Alan Turing, the father of computer science, is a benchmark of sorts that measures whether a system has achieved artificial general intelligence or not. The test is simple. If a user interacts with a machine and they cannot tell if on the other side of the machine is an AI or a human, then that system has achieved AGI. But Dan, I can hear you saying, we can tell when we're talking to ChatGPT. So that's clearly not artificial general intelligence. And to that I say, but can you really? The only reason we can tell while we're talking to ChatGPT is because we're conditioned to know what an LLM's output looks like, all those M dashes and such. But given no prior context, if you set a person down in front of ChatGPT or Gemini 3, would they really be able to tell that they're speaking with an AI? I mean, say you were to try out ChatGPT or Gemini 5 years ago, would you be able to tell that you're speaking with AI? I guess probably not. I don't know if I would have. In fact, if you remember when the Google whistleblower back in 2022 sounded the alarm on how Google has achieved AGI, that person was in fact speaking with an early version of what we would now know as Gemini. Needless to say, I don't think we can reasonably argue against the fact that LLMs are indeed passing the Turing Test. But the key question is the Turing Test really a good measure for artificial general intelligence? Many of you would argue, with good reason, probably not. First of all, it's not that hard to trick people. I mean, even back in the 1960s, you had systems that were fooling people into thinking that they were speaking with real human beings. And these systems had no machine learning and were written with really basic logic in the first place. So were those systems AGI? Most certainly not. Even with modern LLMs, it's really hard to argue that they are truly intelligence. They still mess up in really obvious and apparent ways that no human being would ever mess up in. If this is what we call AGI, then I think that'd be quite underwhelming. Yet I argue that this definition of what AGI is much stronger than what the next two are. The next definition put forward is that artificial general intelligence is essentially a system with the power of another human being or something far superior. You probably heard of the Singularity trope. Someone tinkering in their garage invents an AI so powerful, it begins rewriting its own code, continuously improving itself until it triggers a so-called superintelligence explosion, and then becomes too powerful for any human being to stop. Think Skynet from the Terminator series. But any argument that this kind of AGI is inevitable, I believe fundamentally comes from a science fiction influenced view of the world. The idea that AGI will emerge as something equivalent to or superior to that of the human mind is where the conversation starts to drift away from engineering and into an argument of beliefs. Not because it's impossible, but because it relies on assumptions that are not empirically testable, and therefore cannot be proven true or wrong. As a result, arguments about an inevitable AGI arrival begin to resemble metaphysical or messianic end times narratives, an inevitable future event, beyond precise definition, that promises either salvation or destruction. At that point, we're no longer debating evidence, we're debating worldviews. I'm not going to dwell much on this topic, but there is a really good TED Talk video, which I'll link to the description, that elaborates a bit more on this point. The last definition that I can think of is that artificial general intelligence, when it comes, is something that will make obsolete all knowledge work done by humans. This is probably the definition that most people are referring to when talking about AGI in online circles. An AI agent that can perform any cognitive job faster, cheaper, and better than a human can. Dwarkesh Patel alludes to this idea in one of his latest videos. And to be clear, I have nothing against him. I genuinely respect this podcast and find his conversations to be thoughtful and well-reasoned. But when Dwarkesh or any other person talks about AI replacing all knowledge work, they're once again dipping into that sci-fi world we discussed previously. And the reason is that this definition of AGI isn't as clear-cut as it sounds. To see why that is, allow me to introduce you to the long-tail problem that plagues LLMs and even AI agents too. Pretty much, these models have a never-ending list of possible edge cases that they can fail on, meaning that perfection isn't attainable. And it's really about deciding when these models are good enough. That cutoff is subjective, domain-dependent, and impossible to define universally. Is AGI achieved when error rates drop below some threshold? If so, which one? Is it achieved when agents can self-correct? When we reach continuous learning? If so, what does continuous learning even mean exactly? To me, words like continuous learning are just other vague placeholder terms, not too different from terms like AGI itself. And that leads us to the main point of the video. Will artificial general intelligence even come? Honest answer, I don't know. And I don't think anyone does either. As we've already established, AGI is such a broad and unstable term that we can't even agree on what it means, let alone when it has arrived. But even if you're worried about something that intrinsically to you feels like AGI arriving, ask yourself, is that a rational fear or one inspired by sci-fi? Because historically, moments of technological change have always produced the same pattern. New technologies are framed as civilization ending or civilization saving forces. They're treated not as tools, but as destiny. We saw this during the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century, when political philosophers proclaimed that it was scientifically determined that the Industrial Revolution would either create universal leisure or permanent mass unemployment. We saw it with electricity, with the internet, and then again with social media. And in reality, none of these technologies led to utopia or apocalypse. And that's why I'm deeply wary of anyone who promises a technological utopia driven by AI, because the last century of history has shown us something very clearly. Utopias do not exist. Every system creates new trade-offs and new problems. And every powerful technology amplifies existing human incentives rather than replacing them. So when someone claims AI will finally fix work, politics, inequality, or human conflict itself, that's not a technical forecast. That's a religious outlook. Now let me address some counter-arguments that I can already hear you typing in the comments. What about what all these experts are saying? If you're in Silicon Valley, then what I'm saying might sound blasphemous. Everyone seems to agree that AGI is coming. The disagreements are just around the timeline. And this is at all levels, from CEOs like Sam Altman and Elon Musk, to VCs, top researchers, to engineers, to even legends in the space like Yann LeCun and the godfather of AI. How can I, a random guy on the internet, disagree with all of them? Well, for one, there is an incentive for companies, VCs, CEOs, and even AI researchers in their papers to continuously bring up the term artificial general intelligence whenever they can. I mean, AGI is a very strong marketing term that drives a lot of engagement and attention, one of the most powerful currencies in our modern society. And I'm not blaming anyone in particular for doing this. Heck, I'm guilty of doing this by making this whole video about artificial general intelligence. So of course people will throw around the term AGI, but let's put that aside for now, as I do believe that most of the people claiming AGI are operating in good faith and genuinely believe that artificial general intelligence is coming, including the experts. But experts can be wrong, especially when it comes to predicting future events. Veritasium made a great video about this a few years ago on why experts are wrong in circumstances that drift far from scenarios that they're used to, and how that extends to predicting the future. So for example, chess experts are highly prepared to beat less experienced people, and that's because chess is still the same game even if the opponent is slightly different. However, if the rules of chess were to drastically change overnight, chess grandmasters would be much less prepared for that. I highly recommend watching Veritasium's video to learn more. Lastly, groupthink, where everyone around you agrees on something, is very real and present in the tech world, and everyone, experts included, are susceptible to it. As a recent example, the 2008 crisis had a lot of clear indicators leading up to it, but most experts ignored it, partially because of this groupthink phenomenon. What about all the unprecedented investment and business opportunities stemming from the recent technological shift? If we don't worry about AGI, then how can we stay current in the job market? I agree, we should pay attention to the shifting tech trends. I have been saying that AGI is, in my opinion, a mostly empty and meaningless phrase, but let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Recent breakthroughs in AI have been truly transformational, and there's no reason to believe that they won't continue being transformational in the future. I'm not even going as far to say that we are in an AI bubble. You should be aware of what's happening, how to stay relevant in your career, how to use these tools to be more productive in your field of work, and what market/investment opportunities are there for you to take advantage of. You know, kind of how like in the 90s, the internet boom presented such opportunities. What I am saying though is that unless you're one of the few tech CEOs who has to decide how many data centers to build, or a world leader, I really don't think it's productive to worry about what AGI might look like. More so, I'm saying it's best to specifically focus on what you can control, and when having discussions around AI capabilities, get specific to the problem at hand. For example, how will it disrupt this industry? How can it help you in this specific field? How can this particular particular agent, aka an LLM with tool calling capabilities, help you grow on social media? What threats can that pose if your competitors are using these tools, etc., etc.? So, in conclusion, should you spend your nights lying awake worrying about how artificial general intelligence will replace all of humanity? Well, if this video got my point across, I'd say absolutely not. And to be clear again, that does not mean there's nothing to worry about when it comes to AI. There are serious concerns: deepfakes, shifting job markets, and in my opinion, the biggest risk of them all, us gradually outsourcing all our critical thinking functions to LLMs and AI agents, and thus losing our ability to learn and reason. But none of these problems require singularity. None of them depend on AGI, and none of them involve godlike superintelligence. They're social, economic, and political challenges, the same kinds of challenges that humanity has faced throughout every kind of major technological shift in history. Worrying about hypothetical AGI distracts us from dealing with the issues that are already here. So my advice is simple: focus on what you can control. If I'm right, then those of us not losing sleep over AGI will end up in a better place than those who did. And if I'm wrong, and we all really do end up getting replaced with robots, well, then we would have all ended up in the same place. In that case, stressing about AGI ahead of time wouldn't have helped either. What do you all think about this? Do you think I'm right, or do you think I'm way off? Let me know in the comments down below. I know this is a bit of a spicy topic, but keep in mind, we're all human here. So just have that in mind when you write your comments. I'll be sure to reply to every single one of them. Otherwise, if you liked what you watched, then I'd love it if you hit the subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.